There we go. We talked about, I talked about in my ignorance, I talked about DNA last week. And said something, it's a really long strand if you unwind it. And so I found this article on DNA. And it says that, let's see. About 3 billion, don't have to bless enter here. 3 billion base pairs. Do you want to explain what a base pair is? One of the four, what do you call those? One of the four, yeah, the nucleic acid, ATP, or whatever.
One binding cytosine and
The A one.
glutamine.
So there's 3 billion of these base pairs. They always happen in pairs. And space 6 microns across. That's that picture we were looking at last week. Anyway, if you stretch the DNA in one cell all the way out, it would be about 2 meters long, a little over 6 feet. So I'm over 6 feet in wingspan. And all your cells, put all the DNA, you have 3 trillion, about 3 trillion cells in the human body. There are 3 trillion cells times 2 meters, you know, times over 6 feet. And they're saying over twice the diameter of the solar system. Yeah. And they're all the same. They're all the same DNA. They're all the same structure. What do you call it? What gets made is different, but the cells are the same. It's all the same machinery. It's not like a liver cell is a different thing from a brain cell, from a kidney cell or skin cell or something. It's just what gets manifested, what gets expressed. That's where I'm looking for. So that's really amazing. And the reason that I was thinking about this was the idea that what if we, if they find life on some cellular life on Mars. Well, the first thing would be if it was cellular life on 2 planets that are adjacent to each other. That's amazing. But you look inside of it and it's got some kind of DNA strand in it. That'd just be, that would be extraordinary, because what are the odds that exactly the same kind of life form evolved on 2 planets that are adjacent to each other? And to me, that's just extraordinary. But that's DNA. Extra credit for anyone who knows what DNA stands for. I don't. There you go. Deoxyribonucleic acid. You could have just made that up and I wouldn't be able to correct it.
Yeah, that's true.
We concur.
Some big words. I think the last word was acid. And I do understand that one.
We're not going to ask why. Okay, we're in chapter 18. And we have now the second appearance of Yahweh, the God of Abraham, to him and Sarah this time. In the first instance, appearance in chapter 17, Abraham laughs when God says he's going to have a child, this time next year. This time, Sarah laughs. And Yahweh turns on her and, why are you laughing? Or why is she laughing? And she said, I didn't laugh. And he says, yeah, you did. Who do you think you're talking to? I'm not him. But he walks away from it. At any rate, the promise stands. And it reminded me of, you got this line in here. Where is it? The way of women had ceased. Right here. To be with Sarah. The definitive as it gets. It's the new name for Sarai, or however you say that. But I was thinking of Romans 4. This is a big deal in Paul's thinking, in the genealogy, in the history of redemption, and in the genealogy of faith. And one of Paul's arguments is that that is precisely that. that there's a genealogy, there's not just a genealogy of the law that was handed down through Moses, that's ethnic, but there's also a genealogy of faith that was handed down through Abraham. Only it's going to extend to all the nations. It'll break through the barriers of Israel and embrace all the nations. And so he talks about this and how faith preceded law. So he makes a defense of justification by faith by appealing to the history of redemption. And the order of things matters. It matters this came before that, and that's going to be his argument right here. Verse 18, he's talking about this scene. And hope against hope he believed, I'm quoting from the New American Standard because I read it so many times, that he should become the father of many nations, as it had been told, so shall your offspring be. He did not weaken in faith when he considered his own body, which was as good as dead, since he was about 100 years old, or when he considered the deadness or barrenness, New American Standard, the barrenness of Sarah's womb. No unbelief made him waver concerning the promise of God, but he grew strong in his faith as he gave glory to God, fully convinced that God was able to do what he had promised. Now you got to match that up with what actually happened, because he knows the story as well as we do. That in chapter 17, Abraham laughed at the idea and wanted Ishmael. And so Paul reads the whole story as Abraham bearing through in faith to the end. And then
I'm intrigued by that first statement in verse 18, and hope he believes against hope.
Yeah.
I don't know why, that every time I read it, it intrigues me.
New American Standard is in hope against hope he believed. I mean, he didn't make Ishmael his heir. He did not do that. So that's he's going to make use of the story as well. Sarah's very important in the history of redemption, even though she doesn't really have a lot. She doesn't really have a lot to say, and her portrayal in Genesis is kind of unflattering. She's going to appear once to give, well, Abraham's early portrayal isn't either, but she's going to appear once to hand her slave woman over to Abraham to produce a son. Then after there's a son, she, treats the woman harshly, who then has to flee. So that's one portrayal. And then later on, when confronted with this promise from God, she laughs at it. And then after she laughs at it and he points it out, she lies about it and says she didn't say it, or she didn't do it. That's her, almost the beginning and end of her appearances in Genesis. And so but she's still very important, a very important player in the history of redemption, which just makes the point that God uses these people not because it's not like you see all kinds of positive portrayals of everybody in the Bible that are heroes of faith. You don't see that. You walk through them all, almost, even Noah with getting drunk. Then there's Abraham, then Isaac, Jacob, Judah, Simeon, Levi. I mean, it's Joseph with the divining cup, David with, all kinds of things, Bathsheba and Uriah, whatever that idol was that his wife Michal put in the bed to fool people, pretending that it's David. I mean, it's just Moses he's unflattering as well early on, and a little bit later too. That's the pattern. These people, they're not interested in telling about how great their history was, which is why it's kind of surprising when in Jesus' time, when he deals with the leadership, they seem to be rather impressed with their own history. Mm-hmm. We are Abraham's offspring, they say. Well, I read the story. I read your story. It's not like I made up my own story. I read the story you handed to me. You guys wrote this stuff down. And it is not flattering for your nation at all. So I'm not sure what all the self-importance is. It's not impressive. So, you probably need to back down a couple of feet. And that's part of what's, causes the confrontation between Jesus and the aristocracy.
You know, I can only think of one character in the Old Testament that, maybe in all the Bible, other than Jesus, that is presented without flaw. Daniel's the only person I can think of.
Daniel? That gets any big text. There's ones that don't get much text.
Right, yeah,
But anybody who gets real text, Daniel's,
maybe Joseph, although I have questions.
he's got the divining cup.
Yep.
And the bragging through the dreams.
Right.
Lording it over his siblings.
But,
Sarah, Rachel, I mean,
well, yeah, the women,
Judah and Tamar,
Yeah,
yeah.
Did Esther do anything wrong?
Esther's pretty positive. Esther's positive all the way through too. I think.
It's positive all the way through. It's an interesting book. Really is an interesting book.
Yeah, there's no mention of God in the book.
Right.
He hovers all over the text, but he's not mentioned by name.
Right. But Mordecai, that statement for such a time as this is a powerful thing.
Okay, so that's Romans chapter 4. Very important moment in the history of redemption, an expression, very important event beyond the confines of simply being promised a son through whom he would have an heir. It is the continuity of faith right there. That there was a promise made in chapter 12, and that's the subject of faith. And for us, it's Jesus. But when he talks about believing in God, what he's talking about here is God's promise that he would have an heir. That's the promise. And so, it's this genealogy of faith that's expressed in the promises of God. And then the ultimate promise of the Messiah, who would also turn out to be a savior and a redeemer and a sacrifice and a high priest and a prophet. Okay. Let's keep going. So back to what the story, why they appeared. So to get this, they appear in the first place. Why are they here? Right? The Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre. Let's take a look at that. So this is the larger picture of their area of the world. This is Canaan, where they are right here. It's going to become the land of Israel, the 12 tribes, where David will set up a kingdom. And within that, if you telescope down, here you have it, the southern part of Israel, Judah. Hebron will be the capital, the leading city of the tribe of Judah during the time of David. That's where the elders are going to be. And then on the other side of the Dead Sea over here, that's where Lot went. And this is guesswork, but if you can put Sodom and Gomorrah over here on the western edge of the Dead Sea, which we'll get back to. But that's where they're going. So they're going to travel from here where they're meeting Abraham, and they're going to go down to Gomorrah and Sodom. And why, you may say, we don't know that yet. It just appears, we don't know why this trip is being made. Because he just promised a chapter earlier to give a son. Now he reappears. He gives the same promise. But look at what we talked about this, the prostration of Abraham before these visitors. He prostrates himself before these visitors. He serves them like a slave and lays out, rolls out the red carpet for these people. So, that something is coming. So now you get the promise, which takes you back to chapter 7. He makes the promise. And now okay, this is a big revelation in the history of Abraham's life. It's anticipation again, right? You get it in chapter 7. A lot of anticipation. We've talked about this, that biblical storytelling moves in currents of promise, anticipation, and fulfillment. Promise, anticipation, fulfillment. And you can see that Genesis is just loaded with it. And you can see that really building right here. He's going to appear twice. He's going to promise in chapter 17 and chapter 12, covenant in chapter 15, and then twice appear to announce that it's going to happen next year. building that sense of anticipation. And then in a little bit, you're going to see the birth of Isaac, which is fulfillment. But really, the entire book of Genesis is anticipation, because it's going to close with them in exile. I'm not exile, in Egypt as slaves, in preparation for fulfillment when he appears to Moses just on the other side of the book in Exodus to lead the people back out of Egypt and take them back to Canaan. So you see that cycle from promise, from the covenant in chapter 15. Your descendants will be slaves in a land that is not theirs for 400 years. I will judge that nation, and afterwards they will come off with many possessions. And then they're going to possess this land. So he lays it out in 15. The whole book builds with anticipation as they make their way to eventually to Egypt. The book closes with them in Egypt. And now it's going to open with God reappearing, and it's going to take 12 chapters in Exodus, all anticipation that they're going to get back out of Egypt again. And then they're going to head to Sinai. And then Exodus will close also without fulfillment, because they're not going to get to the land until the book of Joshua, 40 years later. That's when they're going to finally take the land. So it's this humongous cycle of promise, anticipation, fulfillment. And then after that, it really, in a sense, the history of Israel is a reflection on the mighty deeds of God in redeeming his people. And that's what the Psalms are. Over and over, the mighty and outstretched arm of God saving his people. And you'll go back and forth, looking backwards and looking forward. So promise, anticipation, fulfillment, reflection, warning and promise in the prophets, anticipation, fulfillment. Lather, rinse, repeat. All right. There's three men, very well established at this point, with now, what, 3 different uses of Yahweh right here? 1, 2, 3, 10, 13, and 14. And then he's going to stay behind, and the other 2 are going to set out. Verse 16. The men set out from there, and they looked down toward Sodom. So down would, I seem to mean south, down into the valley. I wonder if you could see it. I mean, it's not a big area. If you could see it on the other side of the Dead Sea.
Possible, but in Hebrew mindset, down sometimes refers to going downhill. You know, everybody goes up to Jerusalem, even if they're traveling from
Yeah. But you know, here it is. What's the distance here? The distance here is, I don't know,
Looking across
40
the
miles.
We know that it is close enough.
Uh,
Abraham saw the smoke rise in the next.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So there it is right there. Assume that this is Sodom for a minute, then maybe you can. I don't know. I have any idea. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, that's where they're setting out for. And Abraham went with them to set them on their way. And the Lord, there it is again, Yahweh, said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? And there you see Yahweh speak in the first person about himself. He speaks in the first person about himself and what he's going to do. Actually, he did that. He doesn't really.
10, he said, I will surely return to you.
Yes. So there's the connection back to chapter 17 with the appearance, with God himself appearing to fulfill his own promises. Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. Interesting that he doesn't say that he will rule the nations, which would be a story. But on the other hand, that he will be a blessing to the nations. For I had chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him. And we will find out shortly that Sodom is the antithesis of that, exactly that. So you have this man, Abraham, who was charged with being righteous and just, and God on his way, so to speak, the 2 angels are going to judge a people who are not righteous and not just. And that paradigm of Sodom and Gomorrah as the paradigm of unrighteousness and injustice will last in the Old Testament. It will continue on through the years. Let's see, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me, and if not, I will know. But of course, you can say, see, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. He needs to go look. Well, except for the fact that he's told him in verse 17, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? And what he is about to do is destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So yeah, what's going to happen is the story will unfold in the worst possible presentation of Sodom and confirmation of and validation of God's understanding of what's going on in Sodom. That sets the stage. You have to ask yourself this question: why is this story in here? And there's going to be more than one reason, but it's always before you is to try to figure out why such interest, like it's with Ishmael. Why is the writer why is Moses post Exodus 400 and some odd, hundreds and hundreds of years later, so interested in this story about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah? You can tell the story of the birth of the descendants, the ancestor of the Ammonites and the Moabites. You don't need to spend all 2 chapters out of 50 on Sodom and its destruction. Okay, so the men, let's see. So the men turned from there and went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood before the Lord. Then Abraham drew near and said, will you indeed sweep away? You can see what he's concerned about immediately. He knows what's going to happen. There is no chance that Sodom will come out of this intact. There's no chance that they will be vindicated in any way, and he knows it. Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it to sound like Moses. Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth, wow, he's really going to town, isn't he? Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? And the Lord said, if I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Give me 50, and I'll spare the whole place. I won't kill anybody. Let me see if I got some notes here, and then we'll just probably read the rest of this and then talk about it. Let's see. So what's the outcry? Is it an outcry of sin or an outcry of oppression or both? We don't know yet. All we know is what we're going to find out when we get there. They're going to become the paradigm case of sin and oppression, for that matter. So maybe it's a distinction without a difference. But all it says is there's an outcry from the city, probably of innocent in the graves and so forth, like Abel. The brother's blood is crying out before me from the ground. So let's take a look at a couple of those. I should open these. Isaiah chapter 1. Oh, I already have that one. Let's see. 10 through 16. Hear the word of the Lord. Now this is Isaiah would be after the fall, after the disintegration of the United Kingdom of Israel, and they get partitioned into 2. And you have the 10 northern tribes, which is Israel, and the 2 southern tribes, which is Judah. So David is no longer a single king. After Solomon dies, the kingdom partitions, and you have Jeroboam in the north, who will become the paradigm of evil. And then Rehoboam, Solomon's son, in the south, and then they will have 2 different genealogies of kingships, both of which are evil. There will be not a single good king in Israel from from the partitioning in 931 BC or whenever it was, to the fall of Samaria, which is Israel, in 722. So 200 years, there will not be a single king that the writer first in Kings or Chronicles will say is a good king. There will be 6 of them in the south. They both have 19 to 21 kings or something like that. But any of the good ones come from the south.
In the North Dynasty kept shifting back and
Yeah.
forth too, whereas the South is going through the Davidic Dynasty.
So now Isaiah appears on the scene. You see him in Chronicles in the 700s, I think. If I got that right.
Yeah, he was there when the Northern Kingdom fell.
He's going to preach against both sides, the north and the south. And here we see it here. So is he talking to Israel or Judah? I don't know which one he's talking to. Jerusalem. During the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, kings of Judah. So he's speaking to Judah. This is how he likens them. Hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. Give ear to the teaching of our God, you people of Gomorrah. That's the context for the statement we've heard before. What to me is the multitude of your sacrifices, says the Lord. I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of well-fed beasts. I do not delight in the blood of bulls or of lambs or of goats. When you come to appear before me, who has required of you this trampling of my courts? Bring no more vain offerings. Incense is an abomination to me, new moon and Sabbath, and the calling of convocations. I cannot endure iniquity and the solemn assembly. It's going. Your new moons and your appointed feasts, my soul hates. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. So judgment is coming. That's 1,400 years after Abraham. That's, let's see, 700 years after Moses. And after they've entered the land or something like that. It's got not long to go. And Israel, Samaria will be completely destroyed and will never recover. So that by the time of Jesus, it will be Samaria, but it will have been repopulated not with Jews, but with whoever happened to be in the land during all those years. There was never a regathering of Israel back to the land like there was in Judah. Judah will fall in 587, but there will be a regathering under the Persians. So, but the point being, they become Sodom and Gomorrah become the paradigm of unrighteousness and wickedness. And so that's what he calls it. Really harsh.
But even Jesus in the New Testament talked about Israel, their punishment would be worse than Sodom and Gomorrah. So,
The things done among you had been done in Sodom, they would have repented. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like when he Jaden was it, let's say that in Corazon.
That was Galilean ministry. Yeah. The Ninevites repented. He knows his own history. He remembers those stories, but not you people.
but the thing is, that this is Isaiah, it just shows how patient God was with Israel. Because if you go back to the law, first 5 books, he basically told Israel, if you disobey, I'm gonna punish you, and I'm gonna wipe you off the face of the earth. And it took him 700 years to keep that promise, because he was being patient with Israel. Even so.
Take a look at this. It's the harshest statement. Amos 4, Amos 2. Let's see. Where's it 4? You don't know what I'm talking about.
No,
The harshest prophecy against when it's over. When it is over. It's either 2 or 4. Yeah, here it is. Verse 6. I gave you cleanness of teeth, meaning starvation, in all your cities and lack of bread in all your places, yet you did not return to me, declares the Lord. I withheld the rain from you when there were yet 3 months in the harvest. I would send rain on one city and send no rain on another city. One field would have rain, and the field on which it did not rain would wither. 2 or 3 cities wander to another city to drink water and would not be satisfied. Yet you did not return to me. I struck you with blight and mildew like plague, the plagues of Egypt. I think he actually is going to say that. Your many gardens and your vineyards, your fig trees and your olive trees, the locust devoured Egypt. Yet you did not return to me. I sent pestilence after the manner of Egypt. I killed your young men with the sword, like the last plague in Egypt. Carried away your horses, yet you did not return to me. I overthrew you, there it is a mention again, as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. Yet you did not return to me. Therefore, this is when it's over. Thus I will do to you, O Israel, because I will do this to you, prepare to meet your God. O Israel.
To the northern tribes.
Yeah.
Specifically, but you guys read through that, I'm thinking, it sounds an awful lot like the book of Revelation. Doesn't it? Because
Harsh.
they refuse to repent. And they refuse to repent.
So Amos was probably not a very popular prophet. That's that line from, what's his name? Ahab? You didn't like,
Elijah.
was it Elijah he didn't like? Why didn't you like Elijah? Because he's always prophesying evil against me. Well, yeah.
Well, there's another guy, Micaiah.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it was. Yeah, that's the one. Why don't you go get Micaiah or whatever his name is? No, he always has something bad to say about me. Okay, well, maybe you should do something about that. All right. The point being that Sodom and Gomorrah will be a fixture now, the paradigm of evil that eventually Israel will be compared to from God himself.
I don't remember where it's at, maybe you're gonna get to it, but there's one text in the prophets, I don't think it's Ezekiel, where it's mentioned that their greatest sin is pride.
Ezekiel 16.
So you're getting to it, and I'm getting at it, so.
No, actually, I forgot about it. If it's the one that. This is the one that I have down. Let's see, 16:48 to 52. Oh, I got to highlight it. Your sister Sodom and her daughters have not done as you and your daughters have done. This was the guilt of your sister Sodom. That's a harsh judgment.
Good.
She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and the needy. They were naughty, haughty, and did an abomination before me, so I removed them. Samaria has not committed half your sins. You have committed more abominations than they, and have made your sisters appear righteous by all the abominations that you have committed. Bear your disgrace, for you have intervened on behalf of your sisters. I don't really know what the context for this is. Because of your sins in which you acted more abominably than they are more in the right than you. So be ashamed. Bear your disgrace, for you have made your sisters appear righteous. Harsh. Unbelievable. May remember, these stories matter. We would do well to take that lesson. They kind of represent, Sodom and Gomorrah kind of represent universal depravity encapsulated in one place. It's all the stuff that happened before Noah and after, now encapsulated in one place. Okay. Now Abraham begins the test of God's patience. So we got 50 first. If I find it at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place where they set there. So what is the chances they're going to find 50 righteous people in Sodom?
No.
Abraham answered and said, behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. I who am but dust and ashes, suppose 5 of the 50 are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of 5? But I will not destroy it. if I find 45 there? So this conversation, of course, God knows where this is going. But how low will Abraham go? He's going to end at 10. Why does he end at 10?
There's nothing lost there, and he assumes that he's got.
He almost certainly knows what's going on with Lot, right? Lot's going to have 2 daughters. And they're not husbands, right? I forgot, actually.
Some laws.
Some, are they,
Some laws, but it might be, in the Old Testament.
4? 2, 4, 6, so there's 8 of them. There's 8, it matters. I think it matters. That's what I thought. I thought I had come up with 8, but I couldn't remember why I came up with 8. It also happens that there were 8 on the ark. So he saved those 8 and he destroyed everything else. He's going to save, I don't think he's actually going to save all 8.
No, he saves 4.
He saves, yeah, he saves 4. But anyway, the point is, you got to look at that relationship between the 8 and the 10. He stops at 10. And you got to ask why. We don't get an answer, but I find it interesting. Suppose 40 are found there. He answered, for the sake of the 40, I will not do it. Oh Lord, oh, let not the Lord be angry and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there. Because really he wants to get down to what matters. So I will not do it if I find 30. For what I am taken to speak to the Lord, suppose 20 are found there. For the sake of the 20, I will not destroy it. Let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again, but this once. Yeah, you said that before. Suppose 10 are found there. He answers, for the sake of the 10, I will not destroy it. And then it stops. And it's kind of surprising that it stops right there. Why didn't he keep going? The point being, Abraham is not concerned about Sodom. He's not trying to appeal to God to not destroy Sodom. He's appealing to God to not kill his nephew and the family. That's what he's doing. He doesn't care about Sodom, I don't think.
You just say it.
Yeah.
It is, that's a good point. It is interesting that Lot is never mentioned in the story. Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So the 2 angels continued on, and God disappeared from the narrative. And then when you turn the story, messengers / angels, now from the point of view, you saw them leaving from Mamre.
They were men, yeah.
Yeah, now, well, you can translate angels, messengers as well.
Mhm.
But now you're going to see them arriving from the vantage point of Sodom. And Lot is going to be there. And not coincidentally, he will see them right away. It's almost as if there's a divine appointment. He's going to be waiting at the gate, which of course is not a coincidence. Let's see. So Abraham gets to ask a bunch of questions of God. Usually God is the one asking questions that he already knows the answer to. Abraham is asking questions that he already knows, God knows the answer to. I don't know that this story, it makes a nice sermon on God holding, that sort of a generalized abstracted principle that God will forego his judgment for the sake of the righteous. He does when it suits his plan. When it suits his plan, he has a plan. And so Abraham was teasing out, God, what is your plan for my nephew? I'm not gonna take you. That's why I'm going. Abraham, they're already on their way. And we're going to find out in the story that they're not allowed to destroy the city until they get Lot out of the city. That's why they're in such a hurry. They're gonna up, go. We're not allowed to do this yet. Go. And it's very, very rushed, almost like the Passover, because they already have their marching orders. You're to remove Lot and his family out of the city first. That's so the idea of is the author trying to teach that God has some sort of principle that he won't destroy the righteous with the wicked? History, man.
I have always seen the story more in the light of the importance of intercessory prayer. You know, he puts it there for the purpose of us understanding that we should be praying for them, for others, and wrestling in prayer. So,
Okay, I don't have a lot more to say about this at this point. It's a long setup. This huge discussion, almost laborious. You kind of want, once you realize where Abraham is going from 50 to 45, you're kind of going, just jump down to 10. Just jump all the way to the bottom because we know where this is going. But Jeremiah, I these text up, I might as well look at them. Jeremiah chapter 5. There's the parallels between, I'm interested in the parallels between Sodom and Gomorrah and what happened to Israel. Sodom and Gomorrah and Jerusalem in this case. Run to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem. Look into, this is just prior to the exile, the southern exile of Judah. So you're talking about, the exile was 586 or 7 BC. And it's 150 years after the northern exile. And Jeremiah is going to be a prophet who appears on both sides of that. He will be a pre-exilic prophet warning the city, who will then survive the exile and proclaim, and also be a prophet after the exile. Daniel was like that as well. Daniel got taken into exile. But anyway, run to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem, look and take note, search for squares to see if you can find a man, one, who does justice and seeks truth, that I may pardon the whole city. Jerusalem. You find one man, one single person, and I'll pardon them. There's not a single one. It has no redeeming value whatsoever. I've looked to and fro. There is not a single redeeming feature to the whole thing. And it's almost like it's this eerie reflection on, if I, in the story in Sodom and Gomorrah, if I find so much as 10 righteous people, I'll spare the whole city. And he can't even find one in Jerusalem. There's going to be a statement in chapter 19. Well, I highlighted it here. To the last man. But when God takes Lot, his wife, the two daughters, is it just the two daughters? It is just the two daughters out of the city. There ain't a single righteous one left. That's the point. To the last man. And so you get that same sense from Jeremiah chapter 5 with Jerusalem. We'll talk about Judges next week. Eerie parallel story.
Yeah.
In Judges 19. It's one of the saddest stories in the Bible. If you're not familiar with it, it's the saddest story you don't know about. So that's chapter 18. It's all set up. It ends with that anticipation. It ends with that anticipation as two men now have set out and they're on their way and God has left the scene. And so now, here we go. The two angels / messengers. I have no problem accepting that the author means angels, angelic beings. They clearly are. There's no question about it. Came to Sodom in the evening. Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. And when Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house, spend the night and wash your feet. You may rise up early and go your own way." Does that sound familiar? Exactly what Abraham did. What the righteous do. So this very, very clear, transparent parallel between Abraham's behavior to them earlier in the day, essentially, and Lot's behavior now. They said, "No, we will spend the night in the town square," but he pressed them strongly. Why did he press them strongly? They turned aside to him and entered his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Very, very obvious parallels to how Abraham treated the three. But why did he press them so hard to not stay in the town square?
You're the first to them of the truth.
Lot, what are you doing there? You really wanted this. You were offered the promised land by Abraham. If you want it, Lot, you can have it. I'll go over there. He said, no, I want to go over there. I like the look of that valley over there. So he went west or he went east and found trouble, like everybody who goes east finds trouble. Adam, Babel was to the east. Adam got driven to the east. Cain went east. Lot went east. East. Get on the other side of the Jordan and there's trouble ahead. Which will change a little bit because David, when he's run out of town by his son, Absalom at the coup, he will flee to the other side of the Jordan, and that's where he will actually seek refuge there. He also takes refuge among the Moabites, which is interesting, which we'll get back to. Yeah. Okay. So let's read the story. We're not going to be able to get through it, although I don't have a lot to say. It's so transparent until you get to the story of the two daughters. Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, and here it is, the redundancy, both young and old, all the people, to the last man, surrounded the house. So you get your answer to the question, is there a single righteous person in the city by the time the story opens? The answer is no. And they called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them or have relations with them. And Lot went out to the men at the entrance, shut the door after him, and said, I beg you, my brothers, calls them brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have two daughters. This is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Who have not known any man. So there's your other two daughters. Let me bring them out to you and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof. So if you're one of the daughters sitting in there.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
But they said, stand back. And they said, this fellow came to sojourn. This traveler came. He has become the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. And they pressed hard against the man Lot, drew near to break the door down, but the men reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the entrance of the house, both small and great, so that they wore themselves out groping for the door. Unbelievable. So let's close with, that's the story in Genesis. Speaking of Israel and the persistent parallels between Sodom and Gomorrah and Israel, Judges chapter 19. So the period of the Judges would be the 400 years after the conquest under Joshua, which would start around 1400 by my timeline. So 1400 or so down to about 1000. David took the throne a little earlier than that, but we're going to see Samuel was part of the period of the Judges. That's the mid 11th century, which would be the thousands. And so that all is the period of the Judges when Israel practically disintegrated. They did disintegrate, and they were this far from being assimilated into Canaanite culture. Pagan idolatry, all of it. And so this story happens. It's preceded by one of those great statements. In those days, there was no king in Israel. A couple chapters earlier, this whole section begins with, those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Now halfway through, to remind, in those days there was no king in Israel. Then you get this story. And then the last verse of the book will be, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And so there's this bracket that happens with that statement. And in between, right in the middle, you get this reminder. That sets the context for why this sort of thing was happening. I guess we should wait. Yeah, let's wait. It's a nasty story. one of the worst moments in Israelite history. It's only exceeded by, like, the result of this, which is the near extermination of the tribe of Benjamin. That results from this event.
Then we realize that King Saul came from that same town.
Gideon. Yeah, it's funny how all roads seem to head back to Gideon.
Yep.
In, at that time. All right, we'll go ahead and stop there. Okay, thanks for joining. That's enough for today. Naomi, Nate, Stacy, Jody, Gabe, if you're out there, Isabel, if you're out there.
Bye.
See ya.
Rick, go ahead, say hi.